Hello and welcome to Awaz News. I'm Kubra Ali and I'll be taking you through big news across Canada. COVID-19 and flu set to peak over holiday season. Ontario more urges vaccinations. Bypassing public hearings, debate on Ontario Place bill as undemocratic, opposition. Keanu Reeves and banned to perform at Lee's Palace this week. CBC says it is cutting 600 jobs, some programming. Nearly 20 buses failed to show in Toronto for large pro-Israel rally on Parliament Hill, UJA says. Ontario goes after unethical dog breeders in newly proposed puppy mill law. Large pro-Israel rally held on Parliament Hill to show solidarity, decry anti-Semitism. Police use helicopter to track down teens in stolen vehicle in Whitby. These were the headlines, and let's jump right into it. The animal welfare law that prevents unethical dog breeding at puppy mills in Ontario will be given more teeth according to new legislation introduced on Monday. The proposed Preventing Unethical Puppy Sales Pups Act would amend the previous legislation to prohibit that the province called the harmful dog breeding practices often used by breeders at puppy mills. If passed, the province would make it illegal to breed a female dog more than 3 times in a 2-year period or breed more than 2 litters from a female dog's consecutive heat cycles, breed a female dog that is less than a year old, fail to keep a dog with contagious disease away from other dogs or animals, fail to ensure a dog's environment is sanitary and free from accumulation of waste, separate a puppy from its mother before the age of 8 weeks. Those caught breaking any of the new rules would face a minimum penalty of $10,000. If those violations result in the death of a dog, the accused would face a penalty of $25,000. In a news release, Ontario Solicitor General Michael Kerner said province is the first in the country to introduce minimum penalties specific to puppy mills. The province also said it is considering banning what it described as medically unnecessary procedures for both dogs and cats, including the declawing, tail docking, ear cropping, and debarking. The heads of the Ontario SPCA, Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and Humane Society and the Canadian Kennel Club both welcomed the proposed legislation, with the letter saying the act works to support responsible breeders. Prior to the introduction of the PUPS Act, the Progressive Conservative government enacted the Provincial Animal Welfare Services (PAWS) Act in 2020, which marked Ontario as the first Canadian jurisdiction to implement animal welfare enforcement across the province. Ontario's opposition parties say a move by the Progressive Conservative government to bypass key debate and public hearings on a bill to push Ontario Place redevelopment plans forward is undemocratic. The legislation enacts the province's promise to take control of 2 Toronto highways, largely exempts Ontario Place land from further environmental assessments and heritage protections, and allows the Minister of Infrastructure to issue minister's zoning orders which override local laws. Government House Leader Paul Calandra has now proposed skipping committee hearings, which provide an opportunity for public input and normally come after a bill passes second reading, and skipping debate on the bill's third and final reading. NDP leader Murray Stiles says rushing the bill through allows the government to avoid public scrutiny. The move also limits the participation of members not in an officially recognized party in the legislature, including the Liberals and the Greens, and the Liberal John Fraser says it silences 12% of the House and the 2 million people who voted for those members. Calandra says he has already indicated he would use all the tools at his disposal to move ahead with Ontario Place plans. Nearly 20 buses scheduled to carry community members in Toronto to Ottawa for a rally on Parliament Hill never arrived on Monday. The UJA Federation of Greater Toronto had booked approximately 70 buses to provide transportation to the event, but 17 of them did not show up. Alternative travel arrangements were eventually made for those affected, and UJA Federation of Greater Toronto President and CEO Adam Minsky said the community's voices will be more determined than ever. Awaz News was not able to reach the bus company UJA had previously been in contact with and contracted. We were shocked that of more than 70 buses UJA booked, 17 did not show up, Minsky said. Those 70 buses were the responsibility of a particular subcontracted company. Despite charging in full in advance and confirming its participation, the company did not send a single bus and has declined all communications while refusing to provide any explanation. Prominent Jewish groups, including the Center of Israel and Jewish Affairs, are hosting the rally to show collective strength in the face of staggering anti-Semitism, the CIJA said. At this point, it is not clear why the buses did not show up. In his statement, Minsky pointed out that no show comes after a similar situation last month where buses transporting supporters for a pro-Israel march in Washington, D.C. did not arrive as scheduled. He pledged to respond with aggressive legal action against the subcontracted company. Hate and discrimination against any community can never be tolerated in Canada, he said. A week-long ceasefire between Israel and Hamas expired over the weekend, nearly 2 months after Hamas militants launched a surprise attack on Israel on October 7. Deadly airstrikes have resumed, and Israel is expected to expand its ground offensive in Gaza. Keanu Reeves will be taking the stage in Toronto this week, but the Beirut-born and Toronto-raised actor isn't here to discuss his latest big-budget film or reflect on his lengthy Hollywood career. Instead, Reeves will be playing the bass guitar as his three-piece band Dogstar performs at Lee's Palace on December 9th. The show marked the band's only Canadian date while on tour promoting their latest album Somewhere Between the Power Line and the Palm Trees. The album and tour break a long hiatus for the alternative rock band, which formed in California in 1994 but split 21 years ago. This year's tour is their first in more than 20 years. It includes more than 25 dates, with the only Canadian show happening at Lee's Palace. The band first teased fans on Instagram in July 2022 with posts saying, "We are back and heading into the studio in 9 days." Their latest album that launched on October 6th. Doors to the show will open at 8:30 p.m. and the band will begin at 9:30 p.m. The concert and venue is 19+. There is a lot of COVID-19 circulating in Ontario right now, and levels of both that virus and influenza are on the rise, set to peak over the holiday season, the province's top doctors said Monday. This is a key week for immunization against both viruses, Chief Medical Officer of Health Dr. Kieran Moore said, as it takes 10 to 14 days for protection to take effect. "I want to acknowledge that many people are tired of COVID, but it's not tired of us," Moore said in an interview. "Certainly, we are seeing lots of COVID activity across Ontario. Our metrics for last week were that we had 1,700 people in hospital, around 100 of them requiring intensive care. That level is lower than at this time last year, but at the time COVID-19 activity was on a downswing, whereas now it's on the rise," Moore said. About 1.8 million Ontarians have received the updated COVID-19 vaccine this fall, but that's just not 13% of the eligible population and 40% of people over 65. The rate of people getting COVID-19 vaccinations peaked 3 weeks ago, he said. Flu activity is also on the rise, Moore said. It's anticipated, unlike last year, that influenza is following a more traditional pattern where it will be more active over the coming holiday and New Year's season, and so it will be most transmissible in those social settings that are coming up, he said. Moore does not intend to enact any public health measures. For COVID-19, there were 6,000 doses of Paxlovid dispensed last week, he said. When it comes to the triple surge of COVID-19, the flu and respiratory syncytial virus that hit children last year and put pressure on children's hospitals, authorities have worked to ensure there won't be any shortages of children's Tylenol, Moore said. There are also more than 200 people in hospital with RSV, roughly half of them children 4 years old and under and half people over 65. Health Canada has approved an RSV vaccine for people aged 60 and older, but is only available free of charge to people in that age group living in long-term care homes, elder care lodges, and retirement homes licensed to provide dementia care services. The out-of-pocket cost for the medication can be over $250. 5 teenagers have been arrested after allegedly fleeing from a traffic stop while operating a stolen vehicle in Whitby over the weekend, police say. Police say that at approximately 2:05 a.m., officers responded to a call for a stolen vehicle attempted near Lewis Crescent and Soto Drive, which is in the vicinity of Highway 412 and Taunton Road. Police say that the suspects were unable to gain access to the vehicle and fled prior to the arrival of officers. However, as police canvassed the area, they noticed a suspicious car and soon determined it was stolen. Police said that they initiated a traffic stop, but the driver failed to stop and instead fled the area. The vehicle was later abandoned near Sherwood Drive and found by police with the use of an Air One helicopter. Police say that the suspects fled the area on foot and were all found and arrested nearby. The suspects include 3 17-year-old females from Whitby, a 16-year-old female from Whitby, and 17-year-old male from Ajax. Each suspect is charged with 1 count of possession of property obtained by crime over $5,000. Their identities are being withheld under the terms of Youth Criminal Justice Act. Supporters of Israel and prominent Jewish groups rallied Monday on Parliament Hill calling for an end to anti-Semitic violence in Canada and for solidarity with Israel. "Our sorrow is deep and immeasurable," said Rachel Luke. Her son Alexandre, who lived in Montreal, was killed by Hamas militants at a music festival in Israel in October. "We want to channel this immense pain into a call for action. This tragedy is not just a horrific personal loss," she said. "It is a wake-up call to all politicians, all of them." Luke's son was among an estimated 1,200 people killed on October 7 when Hamas militants launched attacks on Israeli soil from the Gaza Strip. Since then, officials in the Hamas-controlled territory say 15,500 Palestinians have been killed as Israel retaliates, includes with airstrikes, the cutting off of key supplies, and military offensive on the ground. On Monday, hundreds of people gathered on the lawn of Parliament Hill on Ottawa, many of whom brought Israeli flags with them. The Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, which organized the rally, said it aimed to show collective strength in the face of what it called staggering anti-Semitism. Speakers referred to incidents to Canada such as shots being fired at Jewish schools, a Molotov cocktail being thrown at a Jewish community center, and a bomb threat against a high school. Liberal MP Anthony Housefather told the rally that some people have been minimizing the October 7 attack on Israeli civilians. Housefather was among a handful of MPs who recently traveled to Israel at the invitation of Jewish federations in Canada, including Liberals, Conservatives, and one independent MP. Most of them attended Monday's rally. An NDP spokeswoman said the party's MPs were invited to attend, that none were available. However, MP Matthew Green told reporters Monday he had certainly not received an invite. The party has called for a ceasefire in the latest Israel-Hamas war, and spokeswoman noted leader Jagmeet Singh has met with relatives of those killed by Hamas and denounced anti-Semitism. At the rally, Housefather said the trip confirmed his belief that the Hamas attack amounted to a pogrom against Jewish. Conservatives Deputy Leader Melissa Lantsman said she was outraged at Canada's political class for what she deemed to be a failure to protect Jewish people. Canada has somehow become a country that abandoned our long-standing principled position and opted for mealy-mouthed platitudes from far too many, Lantsman said. She called for an end to boycotts of Jewish businesses and prosecution of those behind vandalism and possible hate crimes. Members of civil society called the Canadians to speak up for Israel's right to exist and its need to defend itself against terror. They are also calling on an international community push for the release of hostages held by Hamas. Smaller counter demonstrations took place near the barriers along the ridges of the Parliament Hill lawn, where dozens of protesters waved Palestinian flags and held signs decrying Israel's military actions. Israel's National Security Council recently increased the threat level for the Jewish people in parts of Western Europe, though Canada remains listed as having no travel threat for Israelis. This weekend, Israel resumed deadly airstrikes on southern Gaza after a week-long truce fell apart on Friday, with both sides blaming the other. The Israeli army said more than 250 rockets were fired from Gaza since the truce ended. Israeli officials say 137 people are still being held hostage in Gaza. Another 105 were freed during the ceasefire in exchange for the release of 240 Palestinians who were being held in Israeli prisons. Most of those released on both sides were women and children. Those exchanges took place at the Rafah border, crossing between Egypt and Gaza. Since the truce ended, foreign nationals have been allowed to leave through the Rafah crossing once again. Global Affairs Canada said they included about 130 Canadians who left over the weekend. Event organizers said they were expecting elected officials from various parties to attend, including Diversity and Inclusion Minister Kamal Khera and Small Business Minister Richie Valdez. The possibility of a new ceasefire deal seems remote. Israel has recalled into negotiators, and Hamas deputy leader has said that any further release of hostages would only happen as part of ending the war. On Saturday, an International Criminal Court prosecutor said his office is serious about moving forward to investigate allegations of war crimes on both sides. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation and Radio Canada will eliminate about 600 jobs, and an additional 200 vacancies will be unfilled as it contends with $125 million in budget pressures. The public broadcaster says CBC and Radio Canada will each cut about 250 jobs, with the balance of layoffs coming from its corporate divisions like technology and infrastructure. It has also identified about 200 currently vacant positions that will be eliminated. Along with the job cuts, CBC will be reducing its English and French programming budgets, resulting in fewer renewals and acquisitions, new television series, episodes of existing shows, and digital original series. It attributed the cuts of rising production costs, declining television advertising revenue, and fierce competition from the digital giants. At the end of March, CBC had some 6,500 permanent employees, about 2,000 temporary workers, and roughly 760 contract staff. The cuts at CBC come days after the Liberal government suggested it may cap the amount of money CBC and Radio Canada could get under a $100 million deal Ottawa recently signed with Google. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Kubra Ali. I'll see you back tomorrow, same time, same channel. Have a good night.